want to wish all moms, wherever you are, happy Mother's Day. And for this special day, although we should be celebrated all the time, I want to give you a gift, an episode of conversation with Kate Swenson. Kate found herself down a very unexpected path. And in doing so, she has found unconditional love, grace, and joy. So here's Kate Swenson and a very uplifting, wonderful conversation. Happy Mother's Day.
I dreamed of being a mother from an incredibly young age. While some little girls daydream about being a ballerina or becoming president, I wanted a family.
Sylvia and me. Sylvia and me.
Hi everyone, my name is Kate Swenson. I am a mother of four from Minnesota. I worked my career in nonprofit and giving back and really filling my cup up by helping people. And then had my first son, Cooper, who has autism. And that really took me on what I call a pivot, where suddenly everything is different. And yet, he is the same, but we have to make changes to help him and give him his best life. And flash forward, I am a blogger and an influencer, and I published my first book, had a bunch more kids, and really trying to find balance. That is my everyday thing. I don't have an answer for that one yet, and excited to be here. So welcome to Sylvia and me.
Kate, what a great introduction. And you are one busy, busy mom. Your son, Cooper, is 11. And as you said, you have four children. Cooper's the oldest. I believe your daughter Winnie is about 10, 11 months now.
Yes, she is.
How fantastic. And as you mentioned, you're a blogger, you're an influencer. You started with Finding Cooper's Voice blogging. And your book, which came out recently, just a few days ago, Forever Boy, A Mother's Memoir of Autism and Finding Joy. And people wouldn't exactly put those words together. So there are a couple of things. One, I know that approximately 1 in 54 children in America is diagnosed with autism. April was Autism Awareness Month, so I know you've been a very busy, busy lady.
Yes.
And when you started Finding Cooper's Voice, you now have close to 1 million people in the community. Mm-hmm. So what I'd like you to do, if you would, the introduction to your book, if you could read that, I think it sets the tone for how you can even put the two words autism and joy on the same cover.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I will read the introduction, which is actually the last thing I wrote, which is kind of interesting. I wrote the whole book and then they're like, now you did an intro. I'm like, how do you do that? So I dreamed of being a mother from an incredibly young age. While some little girls daydream about being a ballerina or becoming president, I wanted a family. I would fantasize about it often with my Barbies and baby dolls, playing house well into my tweens. When I moved into my first home with my fiance, my mother dropped off numerous tubs of my childhood belongings in my kitchen. It appeared she had saved everything. In the first tub, I found awkward photos of me in thick glasses with a bowl cut, my mother calling it the Dorothy Hamill and saying it was darling. It was not. Faded second and third place ribbons from elementary school track meets, handwritten notes to friends, and countless diaries with little keys, the secrets of my life inside. Brody and I are going to get married and have 5 babies and dogs and horses and live in a big, beautiful house. We will have 3 girls and 2 boys. I will be a veterinarian. He will play professional basketball and we will be in love forever. Our life will be perfect. I was 7 and it was obvious I had my whole life planned out. But not once did it occur to me that one of my babies could have a disorder that would prevent him from communicating even his simplest needs. Or that his body would grow, but his understanding of safety and independence might not. Nobody thinks it could happen to their child. But the thought nagged me for years after we learned the diagnosis. What if I had known? What if someone had whispered the secrets of my future in my ear during my pregnancy, as if they had a crystal ball? You and your baby are destined for a world different than most. You will call him Cooper, yet the world will call him disabled. It will be hard at first. You will experience suffering, struggle, and sadness, but eventually you will overcome it and catch a glimpse of the inevitable, unbelievable joy he brings to your world. You will come to understand that, in fact, you are the lucky one. But the beginning, well, it will nearly break you. If I had been warned about autism and all it would change, would I have run away crying or laughed out loud? I guess I'll never know. I do know that nothing prepared me for the way stress and worry would overshadow a large part of my life for years to come. And I don't know if anything truly could have. It was something that I had to experience for myself. You may read the first chapters of this book and think it's a sad story, but keep going. You'll see it is not. You may also think it's a story about a boy with autism. And while yes, Cooper is certainly the star, it is also the story of me as a mother finding my way down an unexpected path. It is a story of mistakes and triumphs, of altered dreams and agonizing hope. A story of marital compromise and sibling rivalry, and the shifting perspectives of advocacy as I tirelessly find new ways to give my nonverbal boy a voice in this world. In the end, it's about discovering exactly who I was meant to be, and I owe it all to my son.
As I said, that really sets the tone of the book and your story. And can you go back to when Cooper was diagnosed, when you received the diagnosis? I believe he was 3 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any, as a mom, I know we sit around and they give out these charts on people, this is when a child's supposed to do this, and this is when a child's supposed to do that. It's like, this is when women are supposed to get married, and this is what we're supposed to do, and how we feel, and so on and so forth. Tell us can you talk about that journey going up to getting the diagnosis?
Mm-hmm. So I knew something was going on with Cooper just because he was different than any child I had ever met right from day one. So brought him home and he never slept. And I would call my mom and my mother-in-law and my pediatrician and my nurse on call, and I would just cry and be like, he doesn't sleep, he doesn't sleep. And to paint the scene, in 24 hours as a newborn, he was sleeping about 6 hours, and just in little tiny bursts. And my fourth baby just slept 23 hours as a newborn. So that kind of sets the scene. And I was really met with, you must have postpartum, you're exaggerating. Of course he sleeps, everybody sleeps, every baby sleeps. And he didn't. But it was really hard and conflicting because I was like, well, I'm seeing something and I'm feeling it, and I don't want to be thinking it, but I am, but no one believes me. So went on, and he met his physical milestones, which was great, which can often happen. He sat and crawled and did all those things, but he never babbled. And that was kind of, even today at 11, he's never babbled. And it was kind of our key into this other world where someone would take me seriously. But it took us years to get a diagnosis, and it's still that way today. Waiting lists, is he or isn't he? I call it the in between space. I want to know what's going on. I want to help him, but I don't want it to be this thing. So I would go back and forth. And the day we got the diagnosis, I was actually relieved. I was like, finally, we know. And to touch on those lists that you just mentioned, I still have PTSD over them because I went on to have 3 kids. So, what you're referencing is every doctor's appointment you go, you get given this piece of paper. And I remember looking at them and being like, nope, nope. Like, it was so hard. And now knowing what I know, those lists they're not gospel. They're not black and white like they appear to be. Every kid does things on different timelines. They are a valuable resource, but gave me PTSD.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Especially when you're around your son all the time, the pediatricians, the other doctors, your mom, your mother-in-law, they're not. And there are so many times that we are not listened to, and we're not heard, and we're looked at as being hysterical, or it's probably postpartum, and we're just blowing things out of the water. Do you think that someone should have made this. I know it's a crazy question, but should they have made this diagnosis before?
Oh
Had
yeah,
they listened
I
to you?
oh, I think Cooper should have been diagnosed probably like if it today, he would probably be diagnosed around 18 months, which is early, but he was classic autism. And the thing is I have a lot of guilt, regrets, I mean all those big feelings, working on giving myself grace. But we were really doing all the things we could have been doing. So it wasn't like he was missing out on early intervention, but he should have been diagnosed earlier. Absolutely.
You also talk about when you first learned the diagnosis of some of the emotions you went through, the grief, the frustration, the exhaustion. Can you talk about those three emotions and why they were so central to what was going on in your life?
Well, special needs parenting grief is actually a thing, but it's kind of taboo to talk about. And in all of my writing and sharing, I even, with nearly 1 million followers, pull away from it because it's hard to understand how a parent can be sad about a child standing right in front of them who is adorable and blonde and squishy and perfect, right? But it's not that we're grieving the beautiful boy who is the love of my life. It was the change and all the things that may never happen. And it's hard, it's confusing and it's scary and you don't want to talk about it because people will judge you. And I remember the first time someone said, "Well, who cares if he ever talks?" And I was like, "What? Oh my goodness. Like, I want to hear I love you and I want to hear all those words." And now, I mean, he's 11. I'm in a great place. He communicates. This morning, he said bus upstairs. First time, like unprompted. He was like, bus. It was, I mean, amazing. But I went through a lot of big feelings and a lot of hard years, and parents should be allowed to express that and go through it and talk about it and find a counselor that can understand and a friend. But it is a taboo subject. And the exhaustion, and what was the other one?
Frustration.
Frustration. I remember the first time I had to go, I mean, just crazy on a doctor, which is so out of my comfort zone. I am a fall in line, I will do what you tell me type person. And no one would take us seriously and no one would help me help my son. He had so many health problems and because he was a challenging little patient, no one would help him. And it was so frustrating to have all these doors slammed in our face because of autism. And parents are still doing that today. And the exhaustion, well, there's the physical exhaustion of never sleeping. But there is another type of exhaustion that it's again not talked about of carrying the weight of
Yes.
this diagnosis for my little boy. Do you know that just this morning I was lying in bed and I was thinking, because we have an interview this afternoon, that Cooper needs a haircut. And it's still to this day one of the hardest things ever. And we finally found a beautician that we can go to the salon. We've been there twice now after hours, and it's a marathon and a sprint. But I was thinking in bed this morning, who's gonna do that after I die? Who's gonna, I mean, just like that. I just had that thought. So that's exhausting. And
Very exhausting.
yeah, so there's all these big feelings that go into this, and as you grief is not linear, exhaustion is not linear, all these things. So my message today is, mamas and dads, give yourself grace. I know I said it before, but you're going through something big.
Well, as you said, Cooper said bus for the first time today. He was diagnosed at the age of 3. And when did you see something? You talk about when he first had the television on
Yeah.
and his reaction to that.
So, a lot of parents with autism will describe what I'm about to describe. I could see Cooper. Let's imagine, actually, I was right about this age, 18 months. I could see him. I could smell him. I could squish his little cheeks. But it was almost as if he was a ghost in our home because he was very much in his own world and he didn't communicate and he spent a lot of time wandering. That's what he did. It was like he didn't know what he was supposed to be doing. He didn't understand toys. He didn't understand playing outside. We'd put a bat in his hand and he'd be like, "Whoop." We'd put him in a sandbox and he's like, "Hmm?" Like what? It's like he didn't understand what he was supposed to do in a certain setting. And I have this memory and I put it in the book, and I actually just came across the picture the other day. He was wearing white jammies with stars on them, and the TV was on and Barney came on, that purple dancing dinosaur. And all of a sudden he lifted his head up and he just stood taller and came alive and was dancing, and it was the music and the bright colors, and he had found his joy. And for a long time I was so thankful that he finally had something that made sense to him. But still to this day, 11, very technology focused. So eventually it kind of turned a corner where it's like, we can't always watch Barney Buddy. We can't always have this. And, but technology is still really his whole world.
Okay.
Yeah.
At the age of 8, things changed. Can you tell us a little bit about what exactly changed in not just Cooper, in how you actually started looking and accepting certain things?
Yeah, I hit my lowest point a little bit prior to that. We were told really hard things by all the professionals that shouldn't have been said. I mean, just things that really just dark, negative things. And then on top of that, he was a really challenging kiddo. He couldn't communicate. He didn't sleep. He ran from our home. He had behaviors, which for anyone that doesn't know what behaviors are, like he would put everything in the bathtub. He would strip every bed down to the mattress. He would line up every chair in our house. We'd have to have all the lights off. We'd eat with headlamps. Just incredibly rigid behaviors, unsafe in the car, and I could go on and on. And I hit my low point and I really saw that autism was forever. I had been living in this place where it's like, I'm going to get him talking and I'm going to get him playing and I'm going to get him in school and we're going to be fine. This is fine. And we entered a place of aggression, which is something that we hadn't had. And aggression was something you don't talk about. You don't share with your neighbors that he was hitting and that he was hurting himself and others. And we just really closed ourselves off to the world. And I hit my lowest point, and the next day I realized I had to change. Cooper was who he was. I had to find the ways to help him. I had to look at autism differently, and from that became this whole total transformation in me where I was like, I'm missing this kid's life. I'm missing it. I'm missing the joys. And it didn't happen overnight. It's a journey you have to take alone. And once I did it, I became a completely different person. It's really what the book is about, is Cooper was exactly who he was supposed to be. It was me that had to change. And I wish someone would have told me that in the beginning.
Who would have told you that?
I know.
You've,
Hopefully I'm telling others.
right. You've opened the world to being able to talk, not just with families that have children who have autism, but anyone whose child is different with special needs. You've opened up the world to families with autism in so many ways, but you are also helping so many other people. And when you started finding Cooper's voice, what made you think that, you were talking about things that were going on in your life on a daily basis? Why?
So I actually started as a blog back when blogging
Right.
was super cool, WordPress. And oh my gosh, it was so funny. I started from my couch. I can still see us sitting there. And I said to my husband, I'm going to start a blog. And he's like, what's the name? And I'm like, I'm not telling you, because I didn't want him to read it. But Cooper wasn't even diagnosed. Autism wasn't, associated with him yet. But I had all these big feelings. And I was like, I have to just put this out into the world. I can't be the only mom scared and worried and confused. And it wasn't until probably about 4 years ago I started the Facebook page where I really started growing. And when I did that, I had one purpose: find one other kid like Cooper, find one other family like ours, because where were they? 1 in 54, 1 in 44, whatever statistic you want to find. Um, that means kids are everywhere, right? And I
Right.
couldn't find them. And my Facebook page really changed my life in the sense that I could talk about the unique joys and the struggles and the sad parts and find other people that were going through the same thing. It changed my life. And I think I had this event yesterday for 150 moms, and it was a day of tears and joy. And do you know how many people said to me, "You saved me"? And it's such a weird thing to hear, because I'm like, how? And they were like, "I was on my bathroom floor crying. I couldn't do this autism thing alone. And suddenly I found your page and you were talking about my life." It gives me goosebumps right now, because that's what I needed. And I was able to create this for other people. So humbling.
It's using your voice. We all have a voice, but so
Yes.
many are afraid to use it. The stigma, how could you be angry? How could you be grieving? People don't understand that grief is so many things. It's not just losing something. It's so many things, and we need to attach the word to it. We should be able to and feel that. And you've given people a safe place, sometimes with humor. I've read a lot of your blogs, and some are just absolutely tear your heart. And but each one has something in there that you could find joy out of.
hmm we watched a movie at Christmas time this year on Netflix, whatever the popular Christmas movie was, and one of the characters said, "Grief is love." And that really touched me, because it's so much love. When you think about grieving something, it's you love them so much, and that would really help kind of shift my mindset, where I can talk about this.
Well, you also talk about steps towards acceptance, and one of them is what's one of the top step for acceptance?
Well, I don't know which one you're thinking of, but for me, it was really just acknowledging my feelings and sitting in it for a while. I was keeping myself perpetually busy. I was never slowing down to acknowledge that Cooper may never talk. He may have autism forever, these different things. And looking at what life will be like then. And it was okay. We're here now. We're good. We're good. So I tell so many moms, you have to feel these feelings. You can't outrun them. You have to take this journey. You have to walk through this. And when I see moms of older kids now, as with any group, some of them are really angry still. And I have this hunch that they just never processed and felt and sat in it for a while. And if you don't do that, you're going to end up really bitter. And that's no way to live your life.
And in fact, you're happily married, but that wasn't always the case.
No, that's the biggest surpriser in the book. The spoiler alert. My husband and I actually got divorced. Life was hard. And I dove into autism so fully. I will even call myself a martyr. I was just going to help him, and this is my whole life. And I just kind of pushed everything away. And my husband wasn't on the ride with me. Cooper's going to be fine. This is not a big deal. And I just decided to do it alone. And there were obviously other issues too, but we separated and came back together about a year and a half later, fully ready to take this on together, and went on to have more kids. And life is a lot better now. But a lot of families and couples go through this roller coaster, and they come to me and they ask me, and I'm just honest, it was really hard.
As you've mentioned, you have 3 other children, 2 boys and a little girl. How did you make the decision to have more children? And was it scary going through each one of the, I won't say pregnancies, but the actual birthing and were you afraid of of what may or may not happen with any additional children.
Do you know that's the most common question that I'm asked by moms is that about the decision to have more kids? So yes, huge thing. So with Sawyer, no, because I didn't know they're only 2 years apart. So I didn't know Cooper was autistic yet or that anything was really wrong besides, seeing some things. But I did feel like I wasn't going to be able to be enough for two kids. I mean, Cooper was so demanding and so consuming of my time, his needs and his care. It ended up being fantastic. It was Sawyer is the best thing ever and really kept me grounded in, I always say there's two different worlds, the autism world and then this world over here. And I'm a mom holding, straddling with two kids. And then yes, the decision to have two more kids, it wasn't easy. And there were tears and fights and debates. And would we be enough for Cooper if we had another baby? What if we had another child with special needs and we put that pressure on Sawyer? I mean, we went to the depths of the discussion barrel on everything. And ultimately, I wanted more kids. I'm like, we will love this baby absolutely no matter what. Terrified the first, I would say, 2 months of my third son's name is Harbor of his life when he was being a challenging sleeper. I'll tell you that. And it actually came up yesterday from a girlfriend. She's like, I remember when you were drinking a coffee, just sobbing because you were so scared. And I had a pediatrician say to me, calm down. Let's control what we can control, relax and enjoy this. And then with our fourth, I didn't worry as much because I think I had been there, done that. But I wanted more babies. That's really my answer. Babies are the best.
And you've been able to manage your family and your children in an accepting, loving family.
I mean, I am raising little advocates, and a lot of that comes from modeling and seeing, right?
Sure.
But it's in them. I have a letter to my son Sawyer, which is probably the most popular part of the book. And at the end of the letter, I tell him that I think he is so lucky to have Cooper because he is seeing a world that most will never see. He's seeing kindness, bravery, courage, evil. He's seeing all these different things that most will never understand. And I think he's lucky. And watching their relationship develop is really beautiful.
And tell us about Cooper today.
Cooper
Is he? I mean, because I know that I believe you have on medication, which you really didn't want. You were afraid of putting him on it because as so much, you don't want to just medicate a child.
Mhm.
But there are some medications that are helpful. You're not medicating him so that he won't be a bother to you. You're medicating him because it helps him.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about that journey into that decision and what it actually did for Cooper or has done?
Yeah, there is so many stigmas around giving kids medications. But in our journey, no one ever even mentioned medications. It's so interesting that it was presented to us that Cooper has autism. Like think of like this like suitcase. Like he has autism, this is his thing, he will have it forever. But when in reality, he had anxiety terribly. He had ADHD terribly. And no one ever mentioned these things to us. He had trouble sleeping, which is a whole other thing, these coexisting conditions. And it wasn't until one day we were at a really low point with, again, those aggressions and that self-injuring, which were coming from that anxiety, that my mother-in-law said to me, Katie, if he was a diabetic, you would give him insulin. His head hurts. Something hurts in him. And I made the appointment to talk to a doctor about medications, and then I canceled it because I was terrified because I felt like it was at that moment, well, we're giving up now and we're just going to medicate him, which is absolutely crazy. So please know that. We went to the appointment and I had this whole list of things, like really going to sell my story of why this little boy was struggling. And, we get in there, Cooper drops to the ground, he starts kicking the table and he's rolling around, he's hitting his head. And she put her hand on my shoulder and she's like, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you. We're going to help him. And I felt like this weight had been lifted, that weight that we talked about. We started him on Prozac for anxiety, and within 24 hours, Cooper sat for the first time in his entire life. And he was wearing a red shirt, and he was sitting on the couch, and my husband and I walked by, and we stopped. And I actually dropped the laundry basket that I was holding, and we stared at him, and he looked up at us, and he smiled, and he's like, probably like, what are you looking at? And we sat with him for 30 minutes. Almost makes me cry, on either side of him. And we touched him. And we rubbed his arms and his back. And for the next, as he just kept getting better, still autistic, never trying to remove that. That would never go away. But the anxiety let go of him. And he held his brother for the first time. He sat. He played in his own way. He communicated. He now has 20 or so words. All these things happened. And in the beginning, I had thought that I had assumed that medication would take away his personality. It gave him his personality. For the first time, he had one. So best decision we ever made. I try to be a really big advocate for that, to looking into these things. Now he's 11. He's a fifth grader. He's going to be in middle school next year. And while he still has so many struggles, I will never sugarcoat over the hard parts of severe autism. They're very real. But in our home, he's our easiest kid. Happy, thriving. Mm-hmm.
What was his first word that he said?
Oh, mom. That's how he says it. He says it a million times a day. It's and is dad. And he is this joyful human, and every day of his life is the best day of his life. He's never woke up crabby. And I have a 9-year-old who wakes up crabby every single day. So let me tell you, that's torture. But it's just watching him live this full, happy life, different than what everyone thinks a full, happy life is, has been really fun. I think of myself as a tour guide.
Well, towards the end of the book, I'm just going to read a couple of lines because I think they, again, what you are telling people. Our kids are lifelong learners. Development doesn't stop at age 4 or 6, like I was told so many times over the years. Our children have limitations. Every person does. There is no denying that. Feel the grief, feel the pain. You had expectations as a parent and they didn't come true. You are not a bad person for being sad about that. You don't love your child any less. Give yourself grace. I've had so many mistakes. I have made so many mistakes as a mother, many of them publicly. I am not perfect. I am far from it. Know when to push and when not to. It's a fine line even for me today. Choose your battles. As a special needs parent, there is no phoning it in. If your child is like my son, he needs to be taught everything. The goal should always be independence for our children. That is one of the keys to happiness. In my opinion, being able to independently live your life. I know that may never happen fully for Cooper, but I want him to be as close to independence as he possibly can. That is my most important job as a mother, to prepare Cooper for the future. Mm-hmm. The words you're putting out there now, I might not have read them as eloquently as you would have, but it speaks volumes for what you are doing for so many and what you've done for yourself and your family and for Cooper. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to ask you what you have on your plate to do the future, because it seems the future is changing all the time.
Yes.
And isn't that great? He says 20 words now. You never know when he comes home with his 21st, 22nd word. Mm-hmm. You're raising children who are advocates, who are living a life that not many people have the luck to be able to live. Mm-hmm. And you're doing it with grace.
I try, yes.
Listen, tears come. The grief, as you said, it doesn't go away. Mm-mm. You learn how to let it come over you when it needs to. And for you, you talk about how the acceptance was within you. and how that's changed. So what is the best advice, the most helpful advice that you would tell anyone with a special needs child?
Find people who understand your life. It's essentially what I built in my Facebook page and my supporter group. Find moms, dads, grandparents, wherever you are adjacent to the person with special needs in your life, find your counterpart. You don't have to go through this alone. And I think in the beginning, I was so angry and so sad and so busy, right? I was so busy that I didn't have time to find anybody. And I think if I would have had others who knew what I was going through and I could send a midnight text to, or have, drop coffee off at my house or whatever, there wouldn't be this book, I'll tell you that. So find the people who understand your life, share with them, let them help you. There's no medal given out at the end of this life for the mom who did it alone. Find the people. I have a mom local to me who door dashes me coffee on my hardest days. And it is the sweetest gesture. And she has a daughter who's struggling. It's like, how kind are you to think of me? So find those people. And there's going to be someone listening that's saying, I can't find them. You can. You just reach out at school. Be brave. Find someone online. Put yourself out there, and it will change your life.
Hey, thank you so much for joining me today and giving so many people hope and light. Where can people find out more about you?
So I have a website, findingcoopersvoice.com, where I put all my blogs, and you can find out about speaking and all that sort of fun stuff, my foundation. Facebook is really my active community. So if you want to learn, if you want to share a post with someone who doesn't understand autism, it's a great place to come. I talk about autism in a non-clinical way, which means you're not going to see like the signs of autism. You're going to read a story about us visiting the grocery store for the first time, and it's going to really paint a picture for you. My book is on Amazon and independent bookstores. I always like to give them a shout out because they're my favorite. And I have a supporter group too called Coops Troops, which is a really great place to check out if you are a parent or a grandparent or a teacher or a therapist, because you can ask questions in a safe place and meet someone who understands what you're going through. So come check that out as well.
You mentioned your foundation. I just briefly want people to know about it. It's called the More Than Project, and it was co-founded by you and Amanda DeLuca in 2021. I almost said 1921, 2021. You're both moms with special needs children. Tell us just a little bit briefly about what the More Than Project is.
So I have this belief, and it's the last page of my book, that when you make it through your darkest days, help other moms. So once you make it through, reach out to them. And Amanda and I wanted to figure out a way to give back. So during COVID, of all times, we noticed how so many moms were struggling and they couldn't leave their house. Like I still can't hardly go to the doctor or the dentist. I might have 4 kids, plus what do I do with Cooper? So we offered free mental health counseling to caregivers. We found a company that would do it via Zoom, and they understood special needs parenting, and we gave it to all these mamas. And we're like, okay, there's more that we can do. So we started a More Than a Teacher initiative, More Than a Sibling initiative to honor those, tiny humans born into advocacy. We just keep coming up with ways that we can help people and remind them that they are more than their diagnosis. They are more than the labels that they are given. And we're having a lot of fun doing it. So we're partnering with companies that employ solely adults with disabilities, physical and intellectual. So raising money, however we do that, and then giving it back 100%. And it's our passion project. And we're having a lot of fun doing it.
Hey, keep up the great work. Thank you again. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
You can find us on all of your popular podcast platforms. And of course, our website, sylviame.com. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay tuned.